Hello, this is Mish, and welcome to another WestWorld review. So this one is Season 1, Episode 5, Contrapasso. So before I get started, spoilers, lots of spoilers, so if you've not seen the episode, pause this, go watch it, then come back. Now just when you think you're going to get some answers from WestWorld, some information, a little hint here and there, we're just left with more questions. So many questions from this episode, it's insane. So let's start with, I guess I'll break it down into a couple of sections. Ford, and Dolores, William and Logan, and the Man in Black. And I'll just sum up with a few random things at the end. So let's start with Ford. His analogy at the start is, I think it's very important, but you can, once again, like everything in the show, you can really take multiple aspects. So Ford's analogy was a greyhound running around a track. So a dog spending its life running in circles, then eventually it's taken out of that environment and it gets the goal, it gets the cat, and so it's finally reached its goal in life, but it doesn't know what to do. So we could say that's an analogy to himself. He is saying that he has achieved his goal and he doesn't know what to do anymore. So maybe he's intentionally doing things to make more issues. But it could also be, I guess, a parallel to the hosts. So they spend their life doing a circuitous thing, doing their script that they do, and then when they break out of it, they're finally free, they won't know what to do. So, take your own spin on that one. Now, Ford spent a lot of time with many characters in this episode, so I'll come back to him a few times. But let's move on to the next main section. So we had Dolores, William, and Logan. So they finally reach the Pariah. So they start, I guess, they enter it, and there's an interesting conversation between William and Logan. So it's not referencing any specific time, but they were saying, for me, I interpret this as an event that just happened. So they said, the person that made this park has died, and the park is hemorrhaging cash, because this area is raw, and this is the area that's really hemorrhaging that cash. So for me, I took that as almost as if they were talking about that incident just happened. It didn't seem like they were saying 35 years ago, this person died. So I'll talk more about that I guess later, because I think there's a bigger conversation needs to happen about the time frame of currently Dolores, William and Logan, where they are, and also the Man in Black. I know there's many people that are saying the Man in Black is William, and yeah, I kind of agree, but kind of don't at the same time. But anyway, we'll keep talking about Dolores, William and Logan. So they're saying, they had that conversation there about the kind of, hemorrhaging cash. They want to take partnership of the WestWorld. So that's obviously more information about those two characters and what they're trying to do. So we see them, I guess, go forward. They meet El Lazo, and it's actually Lawrence. So the Man in Black, I guess if you want to look at a timeline of the show, the Man in Black kills Lawrence. Then I think a night passes, and then El Lazo is Lawrence. So once again, that whole timeline issue. So I'll talk about that a bit more. But let's just say, so El Lazo is Lawrence, and he's the main gang member of the Pariah. So they make a deal with him to, I guess, steal some explosives and then sell them off to, I guess, the Confederates who are taking them across the border. So that happens. Pretty interesting, pretty cool. We see, I guess, more development around William and how he is, I guess, this is the first time he's killed somebody that didn't have a weapon. So we see, he's pretty upset about that. And we see a bit of a fight between Logan and William. And interesting stuff that they were saying to each other as well. Logan really was saying that William is there, not of his accord. He's there because he chose him, because he's no threat. And that was, I guess, a suggestion of how they are in their company as well. Because remember, William is marrying Logan's sister. So, and he said some pretty brutal stuff about that as well, which was pretty intense. So there was a bit of a fight ensued, and they kind of go their separate ways. Then we find that El Lazo has actually double-crossed everyone, so he's stealing the explosives himself. And we see that Logan gets taken away by the Confederates, and we see William and Dolores try to leave, and then there's some trouble happens, and Dolores saves William, and she just destroys everyone. She was so fast with that draw, And it's, we see so much development from Dolores. I'll get more into that in a moment because there's a good scene between Ford and Dolores. But yeah, Dolores said, I chose I chose not to be the victim, pretty much. So she chose to take the path of a gunslinger in a way. So then we see William and Dolores leave. They jump on a train, and that is where Elazo is. So Lawrence is on the train. And yeah, so they're escaping with the explosives, and we'll see more next episode around that. But there's many things I want to get into that. I'll just talk about this other stuff to kind of get you up to date if you kind of forgot what was happening with the episode. So let's talk about the Man in Black. So what he did in this episode, well, he killed Lawrence. So we see that Teddy was nearly dead, and he decided to use Lawrence to keep him alive. So there was, I guess, a conversation between them where he kind of said, I don't need you, I actually need him instead. I don't understand the logic behind that decision. If you do, put some comments below, but for me, I think that's yet to be revealed as to what the logic is behind that, but it wasn't. He was saying Lawrence wasn't required anymore, and Teddy is. So we see, that the Man in Black, I guess, does that, keeps Teddy alive. Then he moves on. We see him, I guess they go for a drink. And this is where things get really crazy, but he ends up having a drink, and Ford comes along. So Ford sits in and has a discussion saying, what are you doing? What are you trying to achieve here? And the Man in Black kind of turns around and says he just wants to know the truth, the main, what is the logic behind the park and why Arnold made it. There's something in there that Arnold has done, and he also many interesting lines from this situation. But he said stuff like, why don't you ask me? I can tell you. And he's like, well, the only way I can get the answer is if you give me a shovel and I dig up Arnold and ask him. And then there was another interesting line within that of, he was saying, actually, why don't I cut you open? Maybe there's a hint inside you. For me, that could just be a threat. He could just be, threatening violence against him. Or is he suggesting there that Ford is also a host? Because we know that the Man in Black scalped that person initially to get the map. So maybe he's suggesting that within Ford there's more information, and that would imply that Ford is not human. And then I guess that goes back to the situation of the park. Is it virtual reality? Is it real? What are they? Who's a host? Who's a guest? And it's a big topic. But let's just keep going. So the interesting conversation. But I'll talk more about what Ford said in a bit. But we know that I guess Ford helped out Teddy, so Teddy seems to be back to good health, and they move on. So another big thing we found. So we had Elsie. So she was just working away as she does, trying to fix some code, and she sees the host that he didn't try to kill her, but he smashed his skull in with that big rock, if you remember last episode. So she's saying, what are you doing with him? So she investigates more, she follows him down, and she kind of blackmails her way into, I guess, get another look at the body, see if there's any hints as to what happened. And she finds a laser-based satellite uplink. So she goes to take that to Bernard, and her, I guess, inkling with that is she's saying someone is using the host to smuggle data out of the park. Now, many things about that. On one side, very interesting. Who is doing that? What person is actually trying to smuggle data out of the park? But then another thing here is that kind of, if you believe that as gospel, that really kiboshes the whole virtual reality. Because if it is a satellite uplink, then we can say it's a physical place. We still don't know where or what the situation is, but that, I guess, you definitely say virtual reality is probably not. But I think, these guys are always throwing us curveballs. The directors and the writers, they're just throwing us curveballs every which way. So sometimes it's like, yes, definitely virtual reality, sometimes definitely not. It's really hard to get a gauge on what's actually what they're trying to say. So let's just try and take it all with a grain of salt. But anyway, let's move on. So let's talk about, I guess probably the other big thing is Dolores. So Dolores spoke to Ford a few times. But it's clear to see that Dolores is lying to Ford. So she is now smart enough to hide her true intentions. And I guess that comes back to something I think a Reddit poster posted saying, it scares me. I'm more scared of an AI that fails a Turing test by choice. So as in saying that, they're hiding their intelligence. And that is really what Dolores is doing. So, Ford's asking her about dreams, asking her about Arnold, and she's saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And as kind of Ford walks off, she says to somebody, he doesn't know. So, there's something there going on. And we also learn that she was definitely involved with Arnold around when he died, because he said, you're the last person that was around when Arnold died. So, and he also mentioned, which was, I guess, more information around her, is that he said to her, I want you to destroy the world. Arnold told Dolores to destroy the world. And then, Ford kind of turns around to saying, with more information about that, would you have been the hero or would you have been the villain? And she doesn't answer that, which was generally suggest she would be the villain and she would have destroyed the world. Now, go back a second to the conversation with the Man in Black and Ford. He said that 35 years ago, he saved the park. That the Man in Black, they had a choice to save the park, and he did. So we've got an interlinking story there. I guess there is a confluence happening. It's pretty tricky to pick it up. So the Man in Black has said he saved the park 35 years ago. Dolores has turned around to say to Ford, she didn't make a decision to save the park or not. So she didn't choose to be a hero or villain, but she would have chosen to be a villain and destroy WestWorld. Now, this could be the same incident, or it could be separate, because the information around what the Man in Black knows around Arnold is still pretty patchy at this point. But there's definitely a confluence going on there. So once again, that kind of ties back to, is William the Man in Black? This episode, it definitely felt like that. But prior episodes, I didn't get that feeling. And once again, this could be a curveball. We don't know about times. We're not sure on, is the time when Dolores, William, and Logan, is that the same time frame as the Man in Black? I probably want to say probably not. But I don't know if it's just a sleight of hand. They're trying to distract us with something or not. Okay, so let's try and keep going here. So on to the next main point that I found, and it was a character called Felix. We have seen him before. So he's, I guess they call him one of the butchers. So he is, I guess, the person that fixes up the host's bodies. And I guess that whole situation, why would you fix up a host body? If they've been, mangled, why not just make a new one? Why are they spending all this time doing that? How are they fixing them up to the point where you can't recognize them when clearly the work that they're doing isn't up to scratch? Many questions about that. But anyway, so we see Felix. He's being freaked out by Maeve because he keeps seeing her, and she was the one that, she woke up a couple episodes ago and walked off. Really freaked him out. But we see, I guess, him also trying to figure out how to code to bring back a bird back to life. So, he's stolen a bird and he's stolen a behavior tablet. So his assistant or his, colleague finds the situation and says, you can't do this. Another interesting line between those two. So he said the personality test should have weeded you out in the embryo. Now, I found that to be a very interesting point. I mean, I guess it could be saying that we've got to the point of, in the future, that people can actually choose their personality and choose their traits in that state of, before they're born, or, actually choosing DNA and stuff like that. I mean, that could be what that's suggesting, or maybe they're saying that the personality test to get the job because you were made for this job, hence you are also a host. Now, I got a couple of suggestions in these few scenes that he is a host. And I mean, the ominous music to him trying to learn, for me, that was a suggestion of he shouldn't be doing this. When in reality, if someone was trying to learn on the job, you wouldn't put that in a negative connotation. It would be a positive thing. Why would you try and hide that? There's a reason why he is not meant to learn. So I'm going to say, I'm thinking that possibly all those people are all hosts as well. But then also, that they're waking up too, because he's trying to learn. So once again, you're pretty interesting. Then we see as well that Maeve wakes up and says, we need to have a conversation. Felix, we need to have a conversation. So there's he's freaking out at that because the bird landed on her as well. So that, I guess, is a summary as to what has happened. But let me just, pull out a few points that are really interesting for me. Just trying to keep this video under the 20-minute mark. So I'll just, once again, just briefly touch on a few things. We got a bit of information from the Man in Black around the situation out in the real world. So he was saying, that life is really good in the real world. That's why people come into this situation for some entertainment, because things are so easy. So that would, I guess, definitely rule out of the real world being in a dire straits, because I've seen many people mention it as a theory as to, the situation the world is in this future state. So I think we can say that the future state of the world not in WestWorld, but in the WestWorld TV show, of the people living external to WestWorld is pretty good. The life seems pretty good, if he's saying that. Probably one of the other big things here as well, around the timeline. So once again, just to recap, William, Logan, and Dolores. That could be one timeline. So that, for me, that conversation really suggests that they are in the park not long after Arnold has died. From that one conversation, that's drawing a long bow, but I think that's, to me, they're really kind of suggesting that with that conversation. Now, so jump ahead, the Man in Black. So we see the Man in Black talking to Ford, and they're mentioning plot lines that have been added. Wyatt, that's a new plot line. That's I guess the newest point we know, and so he's talking about that. So the Man in Black is definitely towards the end, 35 years after, and obviously it's referenced many times, 35 years after. That's never been mentioned with Logan, William, and Dolores. So I mean, that is definitely an option as to what's happening there. Is that those two are, one's at the start, one's at the end. Is William the Man in Black? I'm not saying that at the moment. It's definitely a possibility. But very interesting point. It's quite, you may have missed it if you weren't paying perfect attention to this point. At the end, when Dolores and William jump into the train, so they talk to Elazo or Lawrence and say put the weapon down. We see Lawrence and William sit down to have a drink. Then we kind of cut back to Dolores, and it's the same scene. I've got images up there. It's the same scene, and they're gone. So for me, that whole scene is Dolores' memory. So are we saying here that there's actually 3 timelines going on here? Well, actually, probably 2. So we've got the original timeline, which may be Dolores, William, and Logan, and Lawrence, going on that train, having that situation. The Man in Black and Dolores is the same timeline, but Dolores is doing it all by herself. That's what that scene suggests to me. And I've also heard other people mention the same thing, that when Dolores walks away from her house, when she falls into William's arms for the first time, that is the point there where the line breaks. So she walks away from her house, she does that process, but she's not... William and Logan are not there. So yeah, definitely some interesting stuff around that. So for me, I'm starting to think that maybe there's 2 separate timelines here, and they're going to tie in. So we have Dolores, William, Logan doing something with Lawrence. That's why the Man in Black is doing that. But then we see that Teddy's involved now, so maybe we'll see more about that next episode. But either way, great episode. I'll finish up here because we're going to hit the 20-minute mark. So, great episode. more questions than answers as usual with the show, but really enjoying it. It really makes me think. Leave your comments below. Really enjoying your guys' thoughts. I really appreciated all your comments on previous videos. It's a fascinating conversation to have about all this stuff. So by all means, put anything down there, what you guys think about the show, positive or negative, and your theories. Just put them all into the comments. It's really cool to have a read of those, and obviously debate them down there. So it's pretty cool. So you leave me a thumbs up if you liked the video, thumbs down if you didn't, and subscribe if you future content from myself. And check out the video on my theories. That's a bit outdated now. It was 2 episodes ago, but still a lot of fun with that one. And I'll probably do an updated theories very soon. And until next time, thanks for listening, and I'll see you later.